And we are back.
Yes, sir.
I think this is episode number 13, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Either 12 or 13.
So,
That's crazy.
unfortunately, we are missing one of our co-hosts, Justin. He's a
Yes.
little bit under the weather, they say. You know, he's not feeling great, but he'll be back. He'll be back.
Wish
Toby,
him the best of luck.
I know this is a football podcast. I just said I know it's a basketball podcast. But
Yes, it is.
literally, as we started this recording, Drew Brees just retired.
Really?
Literally got the notification as I started this
Well,
recording.
I can't say I'm surprised.
Oh yeah, no, I think a lot of people expected it, but that is kind of crazy.
How old was he? He was like 41.
I think so. I think he was a little
And
bit younger than Brady.
damn. Brady's just making everybody retire.
Yeah, couldn't get it done.
I mean, he got it done once, right? I think he has a ring, right?
Yeah,
Hey, he's a legend now. New Orleans legend.
for sure. You got a few legends in your virtual background right there.
Yes,
Except
sir, I do.
none of them were in their prime.
I mean, that's a
You
little
know,
disrespectful.
none of them.
Maybe not these two or this guy or these two, or maybe not these two either.
You can't tell me any of those players were. Maybe Reggie Evans.
Brooke was different in Brooklyn. I'm telling you, he
He was
averaged
New
like what,
Jersey net.
21. Okay, we got Joe Johnson. I mean, this was like towards the end of his prime, but he was still putting up buckets and making game-winning shots.
Reggie Evans is the best player in that photo.
That's just disrespectful. That's just full disrespect. You got an MVP in this photo, and you say Reggie Evans is the best player.
Yes, sir.
I'll give him. He is a dog. I'll give you that. He was one of my favorite players.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about some of our favorite players a little bit later. But at the moment, let's get into some recent news that happened this past week. So we'll start with the 76ers. That being Philly and their star big man, Joel Embiid. They both dodged a bullet on Friday, as it was reported that the MVP candidate had no structural damage in his left knee after taking a scary fall during Philly's 127-101 win against the Wizards. That said, Embiid is still going to be sidelined for 2 to 3 weeks with a bone bruise. So, I looked it up. I looked up their schedule. Over the next couple of weeks, their schedule is pretty tough. They only play 2 teams under 500. And at the same time, Toby, while I like to clown your Nets, they've won 11 of their last 12. The Bucks, who are in third place, they've won 7 of their last 8. And Miami, who's been surging as of late, have won 9 of their last 10. So without Embiid, Philly is 2-5. How far do you think the Sixers are going to fall in the Eastern Conference standings? Because I think it's inevitable.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're going to hold on to the top seed.
I mean, obviously they still have talent. Like they're still a good team without MVP Joel Embiid. That Embiid injury looks scary when I first saw it. So I'm glad it's just like a 2-week, 3-week thing. But I also took a look at their schedule, and I'm not gonna lie, that's a tough schedule. I think they play the Bucks a couple times. I looked even past April when Embiid is supposed to come back. They still have one of the tougher schedules I've seen. Playing above 500 teams like the Suns, the Bucks, the Heat. But the biggest takeaway I think that we'll see from this little stretch without Embiid is how much can Ben Simmons lead this team. I know I trash talked him a lot throughout this whole season, but I do have to say he is probably the second best player on the team. Shout out to Tobias Harris because he's also nice. But I think ultimately this is going to show like without Embiid, what would Ben Simmons be capable of doing? Because I think he is going to take it to another level without Embiid, as we've seen previously. But with the trade deadline coming up, I think Philly can make a splash on a few key players. I think they have pieces off the bench. They have a good depth, but I think they need one more player that can create their own shot more so than being just a catch and shoot 3-point scorer or like a dynamic defender. One player who has been in trade deadline or trade talks recently is Buddy Hield. I think if Philly can get their hands on a Buddy Hield somehow, then honestly, they're like the biggest team I would be afraid of coming out of the East, competing with the Nets.
I mean, what do you think he would really add to that team, though? I mean, they already have
I think
Seth
he would
Curry.
take.
I feel like Seth Curry is essentially what that is. What Buddy Hield is, just a bigger version of Seth Curry. Is he not? I mean, I think I probably might be underrating his shooting ability because he is one of the best shooters ever.
He is one of the best shooters, but so is Seth. But I just think, like, besides Steph, you got players like Furkan Korkmaz or whatever his name is, and
don't sleep on Shake Milton.
Shake Milton. Yeah, but like, I just feel like they need more of like a scoring impact off of their bench. You know what I mean?
I feel like Buddy Hield would be a starter if he was in Philly. I can't see him not starting. But that would, I don't know. It would take. I feel like it would also.
No, I would see him starting.
It would take quite a bit to acquire him if they were Philly. I don't think Sacramento would just kind of hand him over.
Well, obviously not, but like, I'm talking a player of that sort of caliber going to the Sixers, and he is a high impact player. Like, he will impact a team positively no matter where he goes. I feel like he's one of those type of players.
How regretful do you think the Sixers are for not trading for James Harden and allowing Brooklyn to just that super team?
I mean, they're talking pretty confident right now, but they're going to be regretful come playoff time. Man, I hope there's a Nets versus Sixers playoff series. That would be insane.
I mean, speaking of the Nets, Brooklyn, as I mentioned, has been on a tear as of late. 11 of their last 12 winning, 11 of their last 12. In that stretch, James Harden is nearly averaging a triple-double, 27 points, 9.7 rebounds, and 10.7 assists. He's also shooting 43.8% from three. And then meanwhile, Kyrie is doing just as much damage, at least offensively. He's averaging 28 points a game, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 42.9% from three. I mean, as currently constructed, you could say they might have the best offense in the league. And then the fact that Kevin Durant, who might literally be the best offensive player in the NBA, is just not even playing for them yet, or hasn't played since February 13th, over a month now. I mean, this is literally the best offense. This could potentially be the best offense of all time once everything is clicking. You have to not to forget Blake Griffin hasn't even made his debut yet. You have to imagine he's got something left in the tank. I refuse to believe that he's just going to be what he was like in Detroit.
No, he's hungry. He wants a ring, and
because everyone was like, "Oh, well, I understand the hesitations with Blake Griffin surrounding Blake Griffin because of his injuries and things like that. I'm not saying he's going to be the Blake Griffin of old, all-star, all NBA player, but when you go from being asked to do a lot in Detroit, being a number 1 or 2 option, to being literally like the 6th option on a team. Like, that's going to make a big difference. So I have to imagine he's going to make some kind of an impact for the Nets.
I mean, he's probably not even going to start too. That's the crazy part.
That's what I'm saying. He's not even like, what? He's going to be playing against second units.
As currently constructed, this Nets team is like, take KD away from the picture. This is a team that they can make the finals without KD. You know, they would be a finals contender with the Sixers. But add KD to this team, and yeah, we're literally unstoppable. And another important factor I want to point out is that everybody, as soon as we traded for James Harden, everybody was talking about defense. How are the Nets going to defend anybody? But their defense has been stepping up. Like, I know it's the Detroit Pistons, but they held them to 95. They've been holding teams to under 100 points. And Steve Nash said Kevin Durant is their best defensive player. So having another 7-footer put back in the lineup, plus Blake Griffin off the bench, who will probably get more minutes over Claxton, who's been getting bodied low-key. But I just don't see how a team could beat this team in a 7-game series.
Do you think Kevin Durant is really their best defensive player? Or do you think he's just saying
I think,
that?
honestly,
I see why he said it.
I think he is.
I don't know if it's necessarily true.
Because he's like so athletic. He gets up for swats. He's stronger than he looks. Like, it's hard to back him down. I just think, like, because of his length, he's able to get to steals. He's a problem for another team's offense, I feel like. And the Nets don't really have any other known defenders on their team.
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown. He's solid.
Speaking of defense, the reigning defensive player of the year, Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, I just want to highlight that team as well. As I mentioned, they had won 7 of their last 8 games. Giannis, he's not going to win MVP because he's already won it twice in a row. But over his last 8 games, he's averaging 32 points per game, 12 rebounds, 6.3 assists, and 2 blocks while shooting 56.7% from the field. I mean, that's like ridiculous. I know we don't want to give Giannis the MVP, but I feel like he's entered the MVP discussion again. And I feel like what happens with that is whoever has a good start to the season, those are the players that are going to be in the discussion throughout the whole season. No one really ever updates it.
That's true.
They kind of just like let whatever happens throughout the regular season go under the radar, and then I don't know. But the Bucks, just as a team, Chris Middleton's been playing really solid as well, averaging 21, 7 and 5 in that same span. And then Drew Holiday, who was, injured for some time. Milwaukee was 5 and 5 without him, and they're 18 and 9 with him now. So I feel like a lot of people kind of criticize them for trading for Drew Holiday, giving up a ton of picks, but he's been a solid third option for them, really. He's been closing out some games even, which is kind of surprising when you have an MVP and a former All-Star in Chris Middleton. You give the ball to the Drew Holiday, but I feel like that's a nice big 3, and they could certainly do some damage in the playoffs.
I was thinking about it, and I have a question to pose to you. As I was thinking about Giannis, do you think that Giannis has reached his peak, like statistically speaking?
I mean, statistically, maybe. I mean, that's the thing you could literally say the same thing about Luka. I feel like people won't say this, but literally statistically speaking, Luka may have already reached his peak, which isn't even a slight against Luka because he might be if you average like 28 points, 10 assists, and like 8 rebounds a game for your career, you're gonna make the Hall of Fame, like undoubtedly.
I think it's different
So
though with Luka because I don't see Giannis as much of a ball dominant
yeah, me
guards.
neither.
Like
I feel like mm, I feel like Giannis is like the most misinterpreted superstar in the league. People don't understand what he is, what he really is. I think everyone views him as like a I feel like everyone views him as like a small forward, like wing player because he can handle the ball and pass, but he's really like he really should just be a center if we're
he's
being
just like
honest. The way
the
he
most
is,
athletic center ever, like one of.
basically.
But like whereas Luka can work on getting more efficient, I think it's harder for Giannis to try to learn how to get like a consistent jump shot. If that makes any sense, I could be wrong, but like that's just what history tells me. Like players who can't really shoot usually have a really hard time learning to gain a jump shot. I mean, there's some obvious differences to that side, like Brooke Lopez, but I don't know. I just also like with the Bucks, I feel like even with a player like Giannis, having Chris Middleton as your second best player, as the league is constructed today, I don't think that's gonna be good enough to win you a championship. I think you just need more star talent, like the Brooklyn Nets got. Honestly,
I mean, I think in a league that didn't have a team like the Nets, I think the Bucks would certainly be finals
I
contenders.
agree.
I think if you honestly would have told me at the beginning of the season, well,
They still are finals contenders.
if James Harden does if James Harden doesn't get traded to the Nets, I think the Bucks have a serious shot of taking down the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving led Nets in the playoffs. But with Harden, it's very, very makes that just nearly impossible. But it could happen. I still think. I mean, if we're being honest, matchup wise, I think the Bucks probably match up with the Nets better than maybe any team in the NBA.
Mm,
Because you have Giannis who can defend KD at least as good as maybe not anyone, maybe in the Eastern Conference. And then Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday are like, I mean, Drew Holiday, everyone says he's like the most underrated defender in the NBA. You throw him on Kyrie or Harden. I'm not saying he's going to stop those two, but he's certainly going to make it more difficult than the, almost anyone in the NBA. And Chris Middleton has just the size and length to bother someone like James Harden, Kevin Durant,
but
or
I
Kyrie.
don't. But do you think the Bucks have like the depth to compete with the Nets and the Sixers?
Um, maybe, and they might need to. That's why I think had they gotten Bogdanovich in the offseason, I think this would be a different story because that would have been like another guy that was averaging like 15 a game for you. Plus, you have DiVincenzo. But yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be tough. We'll see how short he plays the rotation in the playoffs. That being Mike
True.
Budenholzer.
Shout out Miles Powell. Hopefully he gets some minutes.
Facts. He should be a starter.
He would get buckets. He would
Oh,
get buckets.
yeah, yeah. He'll be the one that takes down the
I
Nets.
wouldn't even be mad. If he did that, you know how legendary that would be?
That would be incredible. Well, one final team, just Miami. Is that the last team that I mentioned? Everyone saw Miami as a team that was kind of overachieved and then failed to live up to expectations this season, to start the season at least, because of where they got last year, the NBA Finals, obviously. But they've certainly been a lot better now that they're healthy. They're not dealing with COVID. They have some more rest. They've been on a tear lately, as I mentioned, winning 9 of their last 10. Jimmy Butler in that span, averaging 24.5 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and 9 assists. Goran Dragic is finally healthy. He's off the bench for the most part. He's averaging 16.7 points per game and 3.6 assists. So I mean, this team has been solid. One player who's been starting, who probably a lot of people are not familiar with, KZ Okpala. He's been starting for Miami recently. I feel like he's just another guy that fits Miami's culture. Just a grinder. He's got good size. He's 6'8", 215 pounds. He's only 21 years old, but he does all the little things for Miami, and that's what you want. So I think he could be a solid contributor for them moving forward.
Okay.
But
I do want to point out one thing though. At the beginning of the season, I did say if the Heat are a top 4 seed, then what's his face might get Coach of the Year.
Spoelstra?
Yeah, Spole. I said Spole, but also at this point, I think it'll probably go to Quinn Snyder or Monty Williams.
I think probably, yeah, I could see it going to either of them, honestly. But I think Quinn Snyder will probably win, just because he'll most likely, the Jazz will probably have the best record.
Yeah, I agree.
I would.
But sticking with the Heat, I think what makes the Heat such like a scary team, especially come playoff time, is they have their 2 stars in Jimmy Butler and Bam, but they're also surrounded by a bunch of dynamic scorers who can create their own shots. And on top of that, you got complete dogs who just lock up, get rebounds. And because I just think it's a perfectly constructed team. Like you got Kendrick Nunn, you got Tyler Hero averaging 15 and 4, coming off the bench now, which is like both of them coming off the bench is pretty scary. And then like you said, they got Okpala and they got Precious Achua, who I really enjoy watching him play. And they just know, like the Heat just know how to maintain their culture and just like year in and year out keep competitive play.
Yeah, I agree. I like Miami. I think they're one of the deepest teams in the NBA. They do have talent just all littered throughout their roster, and they always seem to find diamonds in the rough every time they get someone new. So,
with that being said, I don't see them beating the Sixers or the Nets in the playoffs or in like a 7-game series.
really,
like, any other team in the East, I feel like they could really, like even the Bucks or the.
I feel like I don't know, because the Bucks they really fell apart against Miami last year in the bubble. I don't know if I think Milwaukee might come with some vengeance if they get another matchup with Miami. So
You don't think that would put confidence in Miami that if we already beat them, they're not?
Yeah, but it would also put a lot of confidence in Milwaukee. Like, I cannot lose to this team 2 years in a row.
But if they do, Giannis is out of there.
Giannis isn't leaving.
I mean, there were rumors he would go to the Heat.
He already signed a big contract. He already signed his extension.
I know, but what if, like a couple years, he's like, "Nah, I want out." He pulls a James Harden.
I think Giannis can win in Milwaukee. I think he can win it all.
I just think he needs one or two more all-stars on his team, or like maybe not more, but like just different. Like
maybe. We'll see. It was fun watching him in the All-Star game.
Who, Giannis?
Some of the lineups, yeah. I mean, he won MVP of the All-Star game. Shout out Giannis. He didn't miss a single field goal. He even took, I think, 3 threes in that game, and that was just crazy.
I think he went 16 for 16.
Imagine if he
Yeah.
was that efficient,
I think Justin called it too. I think Justin called him.
winning
Uh,
MVP.
yeah,
Yeah, probably. I think he did. I think I said Steph, who looked pretty good throughout the game, but Giannis was just better.
yeah.
But well, we can move on now to the Western Conference, a team in the Western Conference who's been on the opposite end of the spectrum. The Houston Rockets. They're
Mhm.
in the midst of a free fall. They have lost. Well, yeah, they have lost 15 straight games. I think they might play tonight, so they obviously have the possibility of ending that losing streak. But Eric Gordon, who's been a staple for that team for many years, is set to miss 4 to 6 weeks with a groin strain. ESPN's Brian Windhorst reported that Victor Oladipo is absolutely available ahead of the NBA trade deadline. And PJ Tucker is reportedly frustrated that he has not been moved to a contender yet. So, a lot of turmoil within the organization, even after getting rid of James Harden, who everyone thought was the main problem. It's kind of funny to see that they still have a lot of problems. But that said, their coach, Stephen Silas, said that Christian Wood and John Wall could return to the court as early as this Tuesday. So, potentially getting back their two best players would be certainly helpful. But do you think, I guess the question is, do you think the Rockets are as bad as their record says they are? And what do they need to do to return to relevance? I think we might have talked about this a while ago, but
Yeah, I don't think they're quite as bad, like players wise or talent wise. I don't think they're as bad as they are showing right now. I think this Rockets team is a prime example of how important chemistry is to having success. I mean, the Rockets are mostly or comprised of new teammates, young teammates, players that are back after like 2 seasons of not playing. Um, Also, after they traded James Harden, I feel like the Rockets were playing more so to show the league that they're still like good. They don't need James Harden. But after that kind of died down and it sunk in that they're not going to be competitive, they're not going to contend for a title. I think that sort of I guess the word is discouraged players or like didn't give them a reason to play for. Now you see PJ Tucker once out, and with all that being said, I don't think that the Rockets are in too bad of a position because they do have a lot of young players. I'm excited to see what Kevin Porter Jr. can do because he's been really balling out. Uh, Christian Wood, I think that even as soon as next year, they can be right back in the playoffs. Maybe not contending for a title, but they can be right in the mix.
yeah, no, I think I have to agree with you. I don't think they're as bad as their record indicates. You mentioned they have just a lot of leftover pieces really from their last like era of basketball. I mean, they got rid of Mike D'Antoni, their head coach. They got um, Daryl Morey left for Philadelphia, and then obviously James Harden is gone. But they still have like pieces like PJ Tucker, like Eric Gordon from the last era of Rockets basketball that are still there, mixed with all these young players that are just looking for a shot. And then you got other veteran players like John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins was there earlier on in the season that are trying to like revitalize their career. So it was really a weird mixture of just players on this team. But um, you know, I wouldn't I think if this team was fully healthy, I don't know if I would necessarily say they're a playoff team this year. But that being said, I think they're not that far away from, like you said, being in the playoffs. Like they have Christian Wood, who looked like the most improved player this year before suffering his ankle injury. He was averaging 22 and 10 uh, in 17 games for Houston. You mentioned Kevin Porter Jr., who looks really good, at least early on to start his Rockets career. He had 27 points and 8 assists in their loss against the Jazz. I'm curious to see what he could do moving forward, if he's a starting guard or if he's like a six-man kind of guy. I'm interested to see what he would look like playing alongside another ball handler, ball dominant player, because he kind of seems like he's pretty ball dominant. Kenyon Martin Jr., I think
Yeah,
he's nice.
he's nice.
He's obviously really young, but he's a solid piece. I mentioned this name, Jayshawn Tate, a lot. I think he's good. I mean, I just think they got a lot of good pieces, but I think they need that one player, that one superstar prospect that can really just like help them get over the hump. That might honestly be Christian Wood if he
It
could, if
might,
he
yeah.
stays healthy. I mean, that literally might be him. They might already have it, but if not, if then they can get a good draft pick in this year's draft. There's a few players I think that could really turn around Houston pretty quickly and get them right back to relevance. So
Do they have their own draft? This might be a dumb question, but do they have their own draft pick?
yeah, I think it's like, I think they originally, I'm trying to remember who it went to, but it's top 4 protected, I believe. So
Okay,
like I don't know if they necessarily have it themselves, but if it does land in the top 4, then they'll get it, I believe.
because there's some really nice players in this next year's draft that could really help out the Rockets.
Yeah.
But
And
like you said, I mean, there it's just a bunch of new pieces. It's hard for a team that's like, unless you're the Nets, like it's a group of a bunch of new guys playing with each other to like figure out how they can win and compete, especially when a lot of them are young or maybe still rusty because it's their first game back in like 2 seasons. But I just don't think that was. I think once James Harden left, that was it. That was the end.
yeah, I mean when you lose a player like of his caliber, it's obviously going to make a immediate impact on your franchise, but again, I still don't know. I don't think they're that far away from getting back to, maybe not where they were with James Harden, reaching the Western Conference Finals all the time, but certainly back to the playoffs. I think they can certainly do it. But I think for our last topic, really, this might be a shorter episode. Who knows? But it depends on how long this conversation is. So the other day, I was kind of criticizing Bleacher Report, the sports media company that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. They've been posting a lot of highlights of LaMelo Ball, and they have been throughout the season. And to be honest, I don't really, it is what it is. That's, got to bring in the Bucks, show the people what they want to see. And I enjoy watching LaMelo Ball. But at the same time, I feel like there's some more players in the NBA that deserve some more, credit for how much fun they are to watch. I feel like LaMelo Ball is a great talent, but there's some good talent in the NBA, man. So who else? Who are some players that you think are the who are some of the most entertaining players in the NBA at the moment? If you want to list a few names.
um. So for my first player, I know you just mentioned him as being annoying because he's always on Bleacher Report, but I chose LaMelo Ball just because I know it can be annoying. Like House of Highlights posts all of his highlights, like even if he just makes a normal jump shot or something. But he's honestly like the funnest player to watch in the NBA because any given possession, he like he just does crazy stuff. I don't know how to explain it, but he just plays with a certain like
Swag.
confidence and swagger. And um, beyond like the flashy passes or the jump shots, like he for being his age, he has like such a high IQ that it's fun to watch him develop like plays where he throws a lob to Miles Bridges or something like that. So he's just, in my opinion, the most entertaining player to watch. And I love passers too. So
I mean, I like LaMelo Ball a lot. I feel like before the draft happened, before he was taken by the Hornets and everything, I didn't really like him because I thought he was a little of like a prima donna. I feel like he was too Hollywood. I don't know. I just didn't think he would really pan out in the NBA, but you got to respect what he's doing. I mean, he's literally been the most. He doesn't even look like a rookie at times.
Yeah,
Like he really doesn't. And some of the plays he makes are just ridiculous. There's a play yesterday, I think, and I think he had like 23 points yesterday. I don't remember who they were playing, but he got the ball in like the left wing, pump fakes, and then spins
yeah.
around to his left and then does like a step back and hits a three. And he made it look so easy. I was just wow.
Like
And
you just know he's gonna get even better and better.
yeah, no, he's definitely a lot of fun to watch. And I understand why a lot of sports media companies want to showcase him. Same thing with like Zion. But
Mhm.
there's some other players, man. I think I'll give one. I love,
Okay.
and this is a homer pick, but Jamal Murray.
Okay.
Jamal Murray, man. I feel like I feel like I haven't talked about the Nuggets in a long time on this show.
Mhm.
But Jamal Murray is really one of the most fun players. When he's like locked in, he's virtually unguardable. Like I literally don't even understand how he can go from becoming I think I don't remember. I think there was a period of time the last stretch of games where cuz he had 3 points I think in a game recently.
Yeah, like a couple days ago.
And he went like 4 straight quarters like over a span of 2 games without scoring like a single point. But
Mhm.
we've seen this season he already dropped like 50 in a game. I don't understand how a player can be so hot and cold, but when he's hot, he literally looks like one of the best players in the NBA on
I'll
offense.
give you that.
He's
Last year's bubble Jamal was like one of the funnest players to watch. Him and Donovan Mitchell when they were
and the
going at it.
and the chemistry he has with Jokic, who's another player that I listed as one of the most entertaining
Mhm.
players. Those two together just are ridiculous. I'm not saying Jamal is a good as good a passer as Jokic, but some of the passes he makes because their chemistry is really incredible because they've been playing together for a number of years now, obviously. So those two, when they're locked in, are just so much fun to watch. I know nobody really likes to watch centers that much anymore because everything is three pointers and stuff. But sometimes when Jokic is like on the block, just working centers, like working Rudy Gobert, like he's not a freaking 2-time defensive player of the year. It's kind of crazy to watch.
I'll give you that. Joker when he when he hits you with that like little step back one jumper or a 1 foot jumper,
The Sombor shuffle.
and you just know it's gonna go in like somehow, even though it looks like it
Exactly. It's
has
just
no
he makes it
chance.
look so simple.
But I was thinking about Jokic. I was thinking about Embiid. But the more I thought about it, uh, when I think of my favorite center to watch in the NBA, one of the players that I don't think we talked about enough is Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I
He
agree.
his game is like he is one of the best catch and shoot threes for a center that I've ever seen. On top of that, he has a handle. He's uh he has an explosive first step like that will catch you off guard, and he'll dunk on you. So like watching him play night in and night out, especially when he gets the chance to play with D'Lo, I think they're going to create something special there in Minnesota.
It's funny because I remember watching a video recently on the career of KG, kind of like in Minnesota, and how he was like obviously one of the best defensive players like ever. I feel like Minnesota. I'm not saying Cat's offense is on the level of KG's defense, but like Cat's offense He really is one of the best offensive bigs like in the league. One of the best shooting centers I think we've ever seen. I feel like they need to surround him with more defense. I feel like that's what they need to do. I feel like they're trying to get in pieces like Malik Beasley, who they got. They obviously drafted Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell. Like these are all players that aren't necessarily known for like defense. And like I see what they're building, but I feel like it would just make more sense to just pair him with someone who could like completely lock down someone else. And
Who would that be though? Like a
I
Drew
would
Holiday?
honestly enjoy, I don't know, but I would definitely enjoy watching him play with like another big. I feel like that no one, I feel like him and like a power forward. Like imagine if
Giannis.
him and like AD were on the same team or him and
Oh
like
yeah, okay,
Giannis.
that would be scary.
That would be crazy. That would literally be crazy. Like, but I don't think that would ever happen, unfortunately.
I think
But
him and Ben Simmons, honestly, I think they would pair well together.
that would be a crazy duo.
But I don't think we'd ever see that happen.
Yeah.
Um, Another player who gets criticized a lot for being in the media or like highlights posted too often, Zion Williamson. Like purely off of his athleticism and his freakish strength, he's one of my favorite players to watch because we've never seen a guy of his size like jumping as high as he can, doing windmills, dunking all over people, and yeah, I gotta give him a shout out.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the thing with highlights is they just make you not like players. Because when the media, when like sports media companies just really cater to one or two players the whole year, it's just like, all right, there's like close to 500 people in the NBA. They cannot be only two guys doing crazy highlights every game. Like that just doesn't make sense.
I mean, that's true.
So,
But at the
but
same
no,
time, that's why sometimes I'll give LeBron some slack because they're always on him. I'll say that.
yeah, yeah, and I think that at the same time though, it's like we say that, but we don't really appreciate what these players are doing, and we just see them as highlights. Like Zion is really, I gotta give it to him. He's elite on offense at
Mm,
least. He really is. I mean, the fact that he started in the All Star game is pretty ridiculous, even if it was because of injuries and things like that.
yeah,
He's gonna be a force for many years
I just
if he
hope he
can
can
stay
stay
healthy.
healthy
That's
with
the
how
biggest thing.
athletic he is and how big he is.
That's definitely gonna be the biggest thing. He's got to stay healthy.
Mm,
That's why the Pelicans are probably being super cautious with him, and they have been to start his career.
yeah.
But I guess one more player that I want to mention, who I just very much enjoy watching. Well, I could probably, yeah, I'll just say Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA because he literally every time he shoots the ball, and I don't think I can say this about anyone else other than maybe Stephen Curry. Every single time he shoots the ball, it literally doesn't matter where he is. I think it's going to go in. I cannot
Yeah,
say that
that's true.
about anyone else other than, like I said, probably Steph Curry.
Even Steph, you can tell like if it's gonna be a little off or not. With
He's
Dame,
just
like you're just scared the whole time.
Dame is just like the most casual, like killer on the court at all times. He's just cold blooded, and he's just he's incredible. He really is. I very much enjoy watching him in the All Star game as well. He's just a lot of fun.
Do you think the Trailblazers can do anything in the playoffs this year though?
I think they are better than. I think they're fifth in the West right now. I think they're better than that.
But they're also missing like Nurkic
Yeah,
and
I mean, I think if it depends on the matchups, really. Like if they play the Lakers, they're probably not going to beat the Lakers. Like I just don't see
what about
LeBron
the Suns? The Suns have
losing.
been on fire.
I can see them beating the Suns just because of experience. Like this will be the first playoffs for like everyone on Phoenix other than like Chris Paul, it feels like, and like Jay Crowder maybe. But I can see Portland taking down Phoenix. I can see Portland I could see Portland pushing the Clippers to 7 games. I
Really,
can see Portland beating the Nuggets pretty handedly as well in the playoffs.
maybe
But
unless Jamal takes it up a notch like he did last year.
yeah, no, it's gonna be a battle. It's gonna be a battle. Yeah. I can also I mean, if they really lock in, they could beat the Jazz.
I don't know about that.
They could.
That's tough. That's tough. It would definitely be a good series. I have to give the Jazz that one in probably 6 or 7.
I can see it. I just don't know. It depends on what Donovan Mitchell is gonna do for them.
Yeah. Bear in mind, we're also going to see a lot of trades. You know, probably as soon as next week with the trade deadline.
Yeah, so a lot of these teams aren't even gonna look the same. So yeah, but we'll have that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about what's going on at the trade deadline. We'll see what happens.
Yes,
And then
sir.
we'll be able to make some more accurate predictions. Like if the Lakers get Andre Drummond, then I would pretty much peg them to make the NBA finals.
Nah,
I don't know if anyone would be able to. I mean, I don't think Andre Drummond is going to like move the needle that much, but you have to remember they also haven't had AD for like the last month or whatever.
true.
So, and they're still, one of the best teams in the conference. But we can like go back in time a little bit because I also want to talk about some older players that obviously are no longer in the league. Well, they may be in the league, but just players that kind of maybe out of their prime or players we haven't seen in a while. So, who are some of your favorite players to watch throughout the league's history or that at least you've seen?
Okay, I listed my starting five. Do you want to know each of them? Like, do you want me to just list the starting five, or do you want me to expand?
We can expand on them.
Okay. So at my first guard position, I got one of my favorite players of all time. They did him dirty recently with all the memes and such, but I got to put Nate Robinson in there just because I think it was 2011 when he was on the Bulls, and he was they were playing the Nets in the playoffs, and he went off when D Rose was injured. He went off for like 35 or something, and the game went to OT, and they ended up winning. And I hated him so much with a passion, like from that point on. But then, like, you got to respect the way he plays, being 5'9" and hustling so hard and being able to dunk, being the only player to win the dunk championship 3 times. So I had to put him up there.
I'll match you with another small guard who's probably my favorite, Ty Lawson,
Okay.
Denver Nuggets superstar. Not really, but no, he was like post. I mean, he was there with Carmelo for I don't know, maybe a season or two, I believe. But after Melo went to the Knicks, it was really like his team for a solid 3 or 4 years. Like he was just definitely the best player on that team. But no, like he was really just one of the most underrated guards in the league at the time. He was like he was kind of like Nate Robinson. He was just shorter guy. I think he's only like 5'11", but he was crazy. He was really crazy. I mean, he was quick. He was one of the fastest players I'd ever watched. He had a great handle. And he like despite his size, like I feel like he was a really solid finisher at the
Mm.
rim. He wasn't afraid of taking it to the rim. You would imagine a guy like him would just be shooting all the time, but and it was just fun. That team, that whole Nuggets team was fun. Like back in the day when they had like Kenneth Faried, JaVale McGee.
Yeah, I forgot about all those Nuggets teams.
Dude, they had a squad. Gallinari,
Yeah, they had
Iguodala
Gallinari.
was on the Nuggets for one season. It was fun. Those teams were a lot of fun.
Okay, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. I'll give you that. But I chose another dog at the guard position, and I wasn't able to watch him during the beginning of his career, but the end of his career, I got to see him just put up numbers against my Nets teams, and that's Kobe Bryant. I wish I was able to see him play in the early 2000s with Shaq, but even watching him in like 2012, I'll never forget. Um, he was given Gerald Henderson. He was giving him buckets. Like he could not guard him, and then he crossed him over once, hit like a fadeaway jump shot, and then like a couple plays later, he came down the court and dunked over him and Chris Humphries. Like that, it was just
I
insane,
think I
and that
remember
just
that
goes to
dunk
show you.
actually. I think I remember that.
And that like
Yeah, that was
if
nuts.
he's doing that at the age of like I don't know how old he was, like 33, I could just only imagine what he was doing when he was like 24, just taking over the league.
Yeah, that's why I don't necessarily like. I don't like. I don't like speaking on things I don't feel like I know enough about. Like I really didn't get to witness Kobe's prime necessarily. Like
Yeah,
I can say I did because I was literally alive, but like I wasn't really like analyzing and watching basketball when I was like 3 years
yeah,
old. Like that's not well, like I'm not gonna lie and say I really got to watch Kobe. But yeah, one of the best scores probably of all time. He was really just a different breed. And I don't know. I feel like what separated him was just like his mentality.
yeah.
Everyone talks about the Mamba mentality, but like that guy was just
He was
insane.
literally fearless. He didn't not care
Yeah,
about anything.
anything at all. Yeah. Oh man. Another guard that I listed who's Hall of Famer, one of my favorite to ever do it. Probably, I don't know. One of my favorite shooting guards ever, Dwayne Wade.
Ooh,
Dwayne Wade.
ooh. Okay.
And I think he does not get enough respect for what he did in Miami because before, I mean, he literally won a ring without LeBron, and I feel like that ring doesn't get talked about enough in his legacy.
Mm.
And he helped obviously LeBron win a ring when he showed up. But like to go from I feel like a lot of people saw them as like a great pairing, Dwayne Wade and LeBron, because they had such good chemistry and they were good friends and everything. But like if you really like look at their games, like they're not necessarily a great fit together,
I agree.
especially at those times of their career. Like Dwayne Wade wasn't like knocking down 3 pointers, like wasn't spacing the floor. Neither was LeBron. They were both like just really, really athletic slashers that were just, dominating the league.
Mm.
And it just so I mean, I think it just helped that they were both like pretty much in their primes when they teamed up, and it like when that happens, it's just hard to stop both of them. But D Wade,
And he locked up too. He locked up I think he wasn't he defensive player of the year or like second?
I don't know if he ever won a DPOY. He was definitely a great defender, though.
He was definitely all defensive team.
Yeah, he was. I used to watch his workout videos and take take parts of his game and try and emulate them when I used to play basketball when I was younger. Because that was one of my favorite players growing up. He was just one of the best mid range games. Also, I
Yeah.
think him, Chris Paul. Chris Paul is just an elite mid range game. It's always the smaller guys that just know how to get their shot off in that area.
Yeah.
I feel like he was really just he was crazy. I
That's
really
a good
love
pick.
watching him.
That's a good pick following Kobe Bryant because they definitely had some good matchups.
Hmm.
But you mentioned that he doesn't get enough respect. There's a player that, in my opinion, definitely doesn't get the respect he deserves for what he did in the league. and that player is ISO Joe Johnson. I mean, maybe if he wasn't on the Nets, he wouldn't be one of my favorite players. But getting to watch him like night in and night out, just get buckets, like the most beautiful crossovers and jump shots you'll ever see. Also, nobody talks about this, but he had a clutch gene as good as any other superstar in the league. He hit buzzer beater game winners, uh, game winning threes, floaters, like literally, like it was crazy how many times he did that just for the Nets, let alone the Hawks and um, who else did he play for? The Suns. So he definitely has to be on my list. He's one of my favorite players I've ever got to see watch.
ISO Joe, man.
Mm.
Yeah, no, he was definitely nice. He was definitely nice.
And he was a big three MVP.
Oh yeah, that one league with all the retired players and stuff.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
giving him the work.
Another player in your background, Darren Williams,
Mm.
D Will. I feel like people don't respect him enough either.
Nah,
Cause he was really at the top of the league when he was playing like with Utah. He was really one of the best point guards in the NBA.
he was getting compared to Chris Paul as to who's the best point guard in the league at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and then he really just kind of just fell off a cliff. Like he was good with the Nets for a couple seasons, but after that,
Mm-hmm.
it was just not it.
Well, another player, and I guess moving into some wings now or forward that I absolutely admired when he was playing in Indiana, Paul George. I don't necessarily like Paul George on the Clippers. I mean, no, I enjoy Paul George. I like his game. Uh, Definitely a great player in Los Angeles and with the Thunder, but he really that's where he blew up in Indiana, and I really got to witness that kind of ascension to stardom firsthand in those playoffs against Miami.
Yeah,
That was like those two series in back-to-back years were just like the most fun watching because D Wade, Paul George, like two of my favorite players, like going at it. Obviously, LeBron was really the focal point of Paul George's matchup, but I mean, Paul George was really just he was fearless. You know, you talk about
yeah.
Ruby. He did not care in those years against LeBron. Like he was giving like LeBron work, and he did not care. Like he's like, all right, I got to step up. Those Pacers teams were a lot of fun though.
That's true. And he could body anybody. Like he was that athletic that he could do 360s in the middle of a game or like I don't know, just body anybody. But I think it's funny that you mentioned that Pacers team because another player that I really enjoyed watching on that team, and this was kind of a little before the Paul George era, but that's Danny Granger. And Danny Granger was like
Mhm.
the OG bucket getter. Like he would whap threes in your face, like because he was tall. I think he was like at least 6'9" or 6'8", but he could just shoot him with a defender's hand in his face, and he had a handle. He just had a beautiful game,
He really like paved the way for Paul George. If you think
and
about it, he
that's
really was
yeah,
just
that's like a player that I didn't really get to see that much when he was in his prime because I wasn't really watching basketball. But even during the Paul George years, like he was still like an effective bucket getter. Like
yeah. No, I definitely respect that pick, Danny Granger.
mm,
He's really about that.
he had
But
range.
I guess another underrated forward that kind of gets overshadowed by all the other, I don't know what you would call them, just great forwards in the NBA. Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay.
Rudy Gay.
Memphis Rudy Gay was really one of my favorite players to watch ever. Because that guy was just a freak of nature. He was like 6'9", maybe six. I think he was at least 6'9", and he had bunnies too. Like he really could get up and just like throw it down on anyone. His release was like crazy high. Like he was basically like a glitch. Like he was really like a poor man's Kevin Durant
Bro,
on offense.
in 2K, he was the ultimate glitch. It doesn't matter what his overall was. He could be a 75. He would still he's still giving you buckets.
Yeah, he was great. He was so much fun.
But in real life, even with the Spurs, like when he was old,
even now, yeah. Yeah. He was great. Those Grizzlies teams, they had a squad.
they did have a squad. I mean, those people don't talk about that Grizzlies team, but when they had Mike Conley, Zach Randolph,
Marcus
Gasol,
Gasol. Yeah.
like that's a dangerous squad.
Like the Jazz now.
Like the Jazz, yeah, but I think the Jazz now might be a little better. Actually, I don't know. It's tough. That's actually tough.
We'll see. We'll see how far they get.
But I guess moving on to my last player. And this was kind of hard because I I didn't know if I should choose my boy Brook Lopez, but thinking about it, he didn't really have like the most fun game to watch. He was just a pretty basic center. So I had to give it to another player who I really enjoyed watching when he was at the top of his game, and that's DeMarcus Cousins. Because people now, like, we think of DeMarcus Cousins as he's been injured so many times and he's only averaging like 6 points on the Rockets. But back when he was on the Kings and every single night he was just bullying, like, the reason I enjoyed watching him so much is he is like the perfect example of what like an all-star center should be. Like he was nasty, he would trash talk, he would get technicals, but at the same time he would bully you and just totally like I guess dominate the game. And he was getting like 50-point nights. I don't know. It was just that time of the NBA was just crazy.
Yeah, I think I was probably gonna. I didn't write down a center necessarily because I couldn't really think of any. But I was literally thinking of putting DeMarcus Cousins on there because of what he really used to do to the league. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a shame that he's kind of fallen off a cliff because of all the injuries he suffered.
How old is he now? Like
He's probably like,
30? Maybe a little older.
is he the same age as John Wall, right? I
Yeah,
don't
he might
know.
be.
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I would imagine he's around 29, 30, middle of his career, but we'll see if he can bounce back with all the injuries. But yeah, I would agree with you. DeMarcus Cousins
When
definitely.
he was playing with IT in Sacramento.
Isaiah Thomas is another player I kind of wanted to mention.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Celtics Isaiah Thomas when he went on that crazy like year.
Yeah.
He was like an all NBA player, I think, that season. That
I
was
think he was like fourth or third in MVP.
absurd. That was really crazy.
That was one of my favorite players all time watching.
Yeah. You can't root against a guy like that, man. That
Nah.
was just fun. That was so much fun. Well, this was fun. This conversation was fun.
It was. I was interested to see if Justin had any interesting takes, but I guess we'll find out some other time.
Yeah, we'll find out next week, hopefully, if he comes back. But it's a good episode, I have to say.
Yes, it was. And everybody should stay tuned to next week because it's going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about trades.
Yes, sir.
A lot of stuff to talk about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We might even make some March Madness predictions because
Ooh.
today is Selection Sunday. So we'll see what the bracket is looking like next week, and maybe
Yep.
discuss
When
who
is the first
win it all.
actual games?
I don't even know. Probably pretty soon. I have to look.
Yeah, I think they're actually in like a few days.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised.
I'm excited for that though.
I don't know who's gonna take it all, man. There's a lot of good teams this year. A lot of good teams, but we'll see.
Shout out LSU.
I think they just lost in the SEC championship today
Really? Oh man, that sucks.
to Bama.
Mm,
Would have thought Bama, not only do they win the national championship in football, they win their SEC championship in basketball as well.
yeah, really hate that school. Really do.
You hate to see it. Oh well. Well, again, thanks for listening. It's a good episode. Hopefully, we get Justin back next week. But
Yeah.
take care, everyone. Thank you for listening. Peace. From myself, Jorie Mickens, and my two co-hosts, Justin Sadovi and Chris Tobias, thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Fullcourt Report NBA show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at FullCReport, on Instagram at the.fullcourt.report. Like and comment on this video and subscribe so you never miss a minute of action.